Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on promoting effective collaboration among board-certified behavior analysts, parents, and other professionals. So happy that you can join us. Today, we will learn about becoming more flexible when working with our teams so that you can accomplish productive and meaningful outcomes. And we will be using the ACT matrix diagram and the pro-social matrix diagram that were developed by Dr. Kevin Polk. And you can learn more about Dr. Kevin Polk and the ACT matrix, as well as the ACT Matrix Academy, by visiting his website, www.actmatrixacademy.com. So we will start off with introducing you if you don't know the matrix, and for those of you that do know the matrix, it will be a brief review. So as you can see on your screen, the matrix is a horizontal line and a vertical line, and in the middle is a circle. That's you. You're in the middle of the matrix, and you're noticing what's going on. The top of the matrix we have labeled as the 5 senses. Those are behaviors that you are experiencing, things that you're doing, things that you see, hear, feel, touch, taste. And on the bottom are things that you are mental experiencing. So things that you're thinking, things that you're feeling, and what we're going to be doing throughout this presentation is sorting into the different quadrants. And sorting is something that we have all been doing pretty much for our entire lifetime, from the time we were in kindergarten, whether we were sorting letters, numbers, and as we get older into other, sorting experiences, household tasks, sorting, cutlery. So it's really something that we're all familiar with. And what I'm going to start to do is we will be going through a series of questions that you're going to be asking yourself first. And then after we go through our first loop, then we're going to talk about questions, how this will relate to your team and how you can better collaborate with your team members. So who is important to you? That's the first question that we're going to ask, and we're going to place it, if you're following along with a paper and a pencil, and if you want to write down some of your answers. So this would go into your lower right-hand quadrant of who's important to you. What are things that you value? And your lists are going to look very different. You could, some of you will have pets, some of you will have your spouse, loved ones, children. Some of you might have values of, being, a good advocate for your children, being good at what you do. So the list is going to look very different on who or what is important to you, right? And those are your values. And those are very different than your goals, because your goals are constantly changing. Once you've accomplished them, then you cross them off your list and then you set new goals. But these are things that are, that you value. That's what's going in this quadrant. And now let's think about, in our lower left-hand quadrant, what's some of the unwanted stuff that shows up. And what I mean by that is, what are some of the things that show up inside of you and get in the way of moving toward who or what is important to you, right? And it could be thoughts, it could be feelings. It could be, feelings of anger, fear, feeling stressed, feeling frustrated, tired. All of these things, they kind of, we all experience them. We all experience stress, right? It's impossible to lead a life that's stress-free. These things are always going to happen to us. It's how we deal with all of these things that show up inside of us, right? And that's what we're hoping this will help you when you go through this exercise, and realizing in that that these feelings, when they show up, what are some things that you can be doing, right? So your list is going to go on and on, like I said, stress, frustration, jealousy might be one. And once you've, gone through that, feel like you've done a good job with adding different thoughts and emotions in that quadrant. Now let's move to the upper left-hand quadrant, and let's think about what are some away behaviors that you do, right? So when these yucky feelings show up, right, or these really uncomfortable thoughts, what are some things that you do to try to get rid of them or to try to avoid them? And it's important to remember that it's really okay to have away moves, right? It's okay to engage in some of these away behaviors. It's just not okay to do them very often, right? And now so thinking specifically, yelling, crying, right? It's okay to cry. It's okay to raise your voice. It's okay to engage in social media, to eat things that you enjoy, to drink things that you enjoy. It becomes unhealthy when that is all that you do, or that is the only behavior that you engage in. And because you become so stuck in the thoughts, these, like yucky thoughts and these away behaviors, that you are become looping into this cycle, and you're going further and further away of who is important to you and what's important to you, because you're kind of just, like you're uncomfortable, you're angry, you're eating chocolate, you're stressed, you're frustrated, you begin to drink to get rid of that feeling, so that you can get a little edge off. You're frustrated, you yell, then you cry, so doing that same, those same things, those over and over again, that's when it becomes problematic. So you really want, so then we again want to remember that who's important to us and what's important to us, and how can we get back to those values. So thinking, moving now into the upper right-hand quadrant, let's think about what are some toward behaviors that you can do to get closer to who or what is important to you, right? And depending on what your list looked like, it could be spending time with your child, whether it's reading a book, whether it's playing, whether it's watching a TV show with your child, calling your parents, playing with your pets, walking your pet. If your spouse or your partner is important, doing some toward behaviors that let them know that that you are thinking of them, like texting them. And if something that you put that's important to you is your own, taking care of yourself so that you can take care of your family, then you can have some toward moves there about what are things that are important to you to engage in, taking a walk, reading a book, going to, a class, a yoga class or a Pilates class, whatever you can do so that you can continue to move toward who or what is important to you, right? So our lives, we are so fast in our everyday lives. And what I mean by that is that things happen so quickly. We say, somebody says something to us and we behave or we act. And it's very, very simple for us to get stuck in some of these away thoughts and away behaviors, right? And we can also become really fused with some of that, with some of those thoughts and feelings. And so when we look back to notice what's happening in the middle, that's you noticing, what you would like to start doing is to slowly, and this is definitely a process, is take a step back and notice what's happening. And notice, remind yourself of what's important to you, and remind yourself of what you said you would do to get towards what's important to you. And catch yourself when you're in some of those awake behaviors, or when you're starting to think about those unhelpful thoughts, right? So when you start thinking, oh, I'm like such a terrible parent, or, I can't believe I said that, just notice it and thank your mind for showing you that that's a thought, and now begin to move toward what's important to you again. So let's bring this towards our topic on how we can become really good collaborators with our teams, right? Because we know how important it is to collaborate with our teams, whether we're at work or at home. We know that identifying a shared purpose with our team is really the first step to our pro-social matrix. As behavior analysts, we work in homes, we work in school districts, and we're collaborating all the time. And whether it's with parents, caregivers, whether it's school administrators, other experts, speech pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, the building principal, the vice principal, right? There are a lot of people that we are working with, and some of them really may not have had the experience in working with a behaviorist before, right? I mean, whereas like a school psychologist has been there for many, many years or decades, and but behaviorists were kind of newbies in the school arena, so to speak. And even when we come into homes, sometimes that's also, we have to be cognizant of, making sure that we are good at collaborating and hearing what everybody is saying, right? And not just coming off as like these, letting our ego get in the way. So before I give away too much, let's, look at our matrix again. But this time, when we look at the lower right-hand quadrant, let's ask, what is our shared purpose here as a team? What are we working for? What are we here to do? And then, usually we're almost all the time, we'll say, well, we're here to help the student, right? We're here to help the client. And it's usually increasing the students' appropriate skills, increasing their communication skills, their language skills, their social skills, and decreasing inappropriate skills that get in the way of that. So we all want to help. We all want to have this student or our client experience the greatest success that they can in their home or their school and in their community. So, really outlining that's what we're here to do, even though we're coming from different disciplines and we might have different thoughts in how we can approach it, but our goal is to help the student. So let's now look at the lower left of the quadrant of what are some of the things that might get in the way of that? What are some things that we might be experiencing? And we can think of, there go those feelings and those thoughts, right? Your ego, jealousy. Sometimes therapists can become jealous of other therapists because of the way a student responds, to one therapist versus another. Your ego, somebody else has better answers than you do, and you might come across looking at like, oh, well, why is he even here? Why is she even here? She's not adding anything to this discussion. Fear that, they might discover you don't know what you're talking about, and we certainly do know what we're talking about. But those are different things that come up, and they come up inside of us. And if we continue to dwell on them, they really get in our way of doing what we started out to do, which is to help the student, right? You don't want to become fused with those thoughts or emotions too much, right? Just like we did in our first round, you notice them, and then you're like, okay, thanks for coming, and I'm going to put you right here, right now, and we're going to do something else. But you also want to think about what are some things that team members do to avoid that uncomfortable stuff, right? So we know we should be noticing and going back to what our shared purpose is. However, sometimes team members they quickly spiral and they begin to engage in behaviors that are avoiding, these feelings. And sometimes those away moves that we engage in can become quite disruptive to our team building. And we begin to argue with one another. There are raised voices, banging on the table, right? People throwing reports at one another. And sometimes people can become repetitive in speech. And what what I mean by that is they are so stuck on getting their point across that they're not at all, whenever it's their turn to speak, or they become interruptive and they just repeat their idea over and over again without taking notice of what anybody else has said, right? So we know that this type of, these type of behaviors, they really become problematic, and we are not moving anywhere near where we want to be, which is what is our shared purpose and how do we help the student, right? So we're engaging in that loop and it's not helpful at all. And so we want to begin thinking of what are those toward behaviors, what can we do as a team to move toward our shared purpose, right? And that's going to go into your upper right-hand quadrant. Again, if you're just following along with pencil and paper, you can just list as we go along. But what are some, what can we do to move toward our shared purpose, right? We're here to help the student. How do we do that? So some things that we can do is we can become active listeners. And by that, I mean, listening completely to the person that's speaking, even if you begin to think, well, I don't agree with that. Wait your turn, ask questions, and when you ask a question, make sure that it's not a pointed question, that you are asking for clarification. You might even preface it as saying, just to clarify, and I just want to really understand, but really making it, when you preface it with that, and when you say things like that, it kind of opens up the environment and opens up the room, right? That you're here for a solution, you're all solution oriented. And you can even say things like, I really don't have all the answers, but we're here to problem solve and let's see what we can do, right? Because you're coming at it from, different disciplines. You're not the expert in all, in speech and in physical therapy and in occupational therapy, and you really all want to collaborate with your great ideas. And thinking about the parents that are sitting in on this meeting, right? They've entrusted you, the team, to help their child. And if you're sitting there arguing with one another, that kind of leaves them with, okay, what is going on here? So, using this as, something that you and your team are prepping for, using this matrix. You can do that for yourself before you walk into a meeting, or if you are having a pre-meeting with your team, you can kind of help your team go through this, this pro-social matrix on, how can we continue to stay on what is important to us? And how do we continue to work on our shared purpose, which is really to help the student, right? And your list of toward moves can go on, and you can have other things that I just haven't listed here. This is just to kind of get you going and thinking. And this is just how unhealthy it is to allow your ego to get in the way of what's important, which is your shared purpose of helping the student. When you are, in the middle of our pro-social matrix, is the team becoming more psychologically flexible? And when that happens with the team, right? When you become you're noticing your moves, your team is beginning to feel safe in that environment. All of you feel that you have a voice that will be heard, shared ideas. People become creative. So if something that you have been working on, hasn't been working, that you've been trying to get your student to do something and your plan has not been effective. So once everybody knows that they're there for the same reason and the same shared purpose, there might be more creative solutions that you just haven't thought about, and allowing yourself to be open to that, to hearing those solutions is huge, right? When you're thinking about, we're here to help the student, that's our shared purpose. Also the psychological flexibility that we establish, it allows everybody to make better decisions, right? And it allows the parents to feel safe that they are entrusting their child or their adolescent to a team that really cares and that is really there despite all the different angles that we're coming from, but we're all there to help and to work together. Okay, and just to screen, the ego. So, just to end on, I wanted to thank you all for coming and for listening to this webinar. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have questions, you can feel free to email me at my elenazaklis@gmail.com. You can also visit my website. You can tweet at me. And you can also, if you visit my website, you can download the slides for yourself for free. So they're up there on my website. You can just look under Pro Social Matrix. That's one of the landing pages, and then you can download the slide there. So thanks again for coming, and I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great rest of your day.